In this video, we're going to go over HTML forms and input. All right, so forms can have multiple types of input, so we're going to take a look at each one. So first thing we're going to do is in the body, let's put in some form tags. And in here, we're going to have a label. Now, your inputs don't have to have labels, but it is a good idea. So this will be, let's say, name. And I'm going to put a BR here for a line break. And then an input. Now the input takes in a type attribute, and this is going to be a text input. Alright, and then typically you're also going to want a name attribute so that when you submit the form on the server side, you can grab the data that's submitted. Okay, now we're not going to get into that in this section because this is strictly HTML. You would use something like PHP or even JavaScript to process a form. Alright, so for the name, it's also going to be name. Alright, and then we're going to put in 2 more line breaks. And then we'll put our next field. So we'll go ahead and copy that. Okay, next one will be email. Now with HTML5, we have an email type we can use. Change that to email. Alright, and let's put a heading up here too. Okay, so this we'll say registration form. Alright, so if we save that and take a look, you can see we have our text input for name, and then we have our email input, which doesn't look any different, but if you want to validate it using HTML5, you can do that. Alright, so let's go ahead and copy that. And we'll put in another field. This one will be password. And then the type, we can actually change that to password as well. And then the name. Alright, now the difference with password is that, when you type in text or email, you can see what you're typing, but password, you can't. It's blocked. Okay, next field we have is a select list. So let's paste this in and let's change this to location. And I'm going to get rid of the input. And we're going to use a select tag. And we'll give that a name of location. Okay, now inside select you want to have options. And those will have a value attribute. So let's say MA for mass. And then the text we want to display is also MA. Alright, and if we go ahead and copy that, and we'll just put in a couple other things. We'll say New York, and let's do California. Okay, so if I go ahead and save that and reload, you can see we have a select with a drop down with those 3 locations. Now let's say when we come to the page we want New York to be selected. What we can do is go into here, into the option, and just say selected. Save that, reload, and now you can see New York is automatically selected. So the next input that I'm going to show you are radio buttons. So let's go ahead and copy one of these. Okay, so for this, let's say gender, and we're going to say input type is going to equal radio. And then we need a name, which will be gender. And then we need a value. We'll say male. And then we just want the display text to say male as well. Alright, and then I'm just going to copy that. And we're going to have another one. You want to have the same name. That's how these 2 inputs will be linked by their name. Okay, we just want to change the value to female, just like that. If we go ahead and save and reload, now we have gender, male and female, and you can see that we can't choose both at the same time. Now again, if we want one of these to be selected, let's say we want female to be selected, we can go in here and say checked. Save it, reload, and now you can see female's checked. Alright, so next we have checkboxes, which is kind of similar to radio. So I'm going to just copy this. Let me space these out a little bit. Okay, so for this will be interests. It's going to be an input with the type of checkbox. Name will be interests. And then the value, let's say movies. Alright, and I'm going to get rid of this radio and then just copy the checkbox. Okay, so this one here, let's change the value to music. And then this one will change to sports. And this one will change to art. Okay, so if we go ahead and save that and reload, you can see we have our checkbox. Now, checkboxes, you can actually select more than one. Alright, so that's the main difference from a radio button. Alright, and again, if you want something checked, you can do the same thing. Just go in here and say checked. And we can do that with multiple checkboxes. So if we save that, reload, you can see that now these two are checked. Alright, and then finally we're going to have a submit button, which is also an input. So input type is going to equal submit. And then you want to include a value, which will be the text on the button. And we'll just say submit. Save that, reload, and there's our submit button. Alright, so pretty simple form. Now, like I said, usually you'd process this with something like PHP or whatever it may be, but usually you would go to your form tag and you'd select an action, which is the type of HTTP request you want to send. In a form like this, it's almost always going to be post, okay, because we're submitting data to a server. If it was something like a search form where we're requesting data, that might be a GET request. All right, and then for the action, that would be something like, let's say index.php, something like that. All right, but we're not going to get into that. Now with HTML5, there's actually a really easy validation mechanism that we can use. So right now, if we were to click submit, it's going to go to index.php, which isn't there, so it's going to give us an error. But let's say we want the name field to be required. We could actually just put in required, save it, reload, and then try to submit it, and you can see it says please fill out this field. Okay, so really easy validation, front-end validation. Now you'd probably want to have some validation on the server as well, maybe use some JavaScript, but that's something really simple to implement here. Alright, we also have the ability to add field sets which can break up the form into certain categories. Alright, so let's say we want to go right here and we'll say field set. The closing field set we're going to put after password. Okay, so just like that. And then in our field set we're going to have a legend. And in here, let's say account. Okay, so if I save that and reload, you can see that it's split up. It has this border around it with the legend. Alright, so we can go down here and let's put in another field set. And this will end right before the submit. And we'll put a legend. And we'll say user info. Save that, reload. Now we have this user info area. Alright, we can put a line break here. Alright, so just a way to break up your form if needed. Okay, so that's going to be it for forms and input. In the next video, we're going to take a look at some really simple CSS styling just to make things look a little better.